the reality is that I believe, for me, what I believe is that God had a good reason for allowing this to happen. And unfortunately, in our country, we never had a lockdown, which is, I think it's weird to other people here. We have never had lockdowns since the COVID-19. And life was moving on as normal, but we took precautions. But the church, we had suffered a little bit because most of members were afraid to come to church. But what is funny enough, they were attending to jobs, they attended markets, but on Sundays, there's I think
okay.
less impact, like for socio-economical so far. We have not experienced anything that is so terrible. But the reality behind it that we thank God that even our president had faith. He believes that God had purpose, but also encouraged people not to give up and told us to look upon God, because the one who knows the answers to this kind of disaster is God alone. So we should not think out of the box. Let's seek for the God and see what God will reveal. We have seen that it is not sin. It's a disease like other diseases, like Ebola, like HIV and AIDS, like any other disease. But
okay, we got your point.
Now had come to its point of origin, where the church.
We got your point. We got your point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. We got your point. Some people are suggesting that we have to read the text before we start commenting. The text is on the screen. What we do, we give you maybe a few minutes to read and comment. Thank you, Reverend Urasa, for your comment. Any other comment?
Yes, proceed.
Okay, this is 2. We should test every claim of prophecy. Let 2 or 3 prophets speak, say the Bible, and let the other wait what is said. 1 Corinthians chapter 4, 1 Corinthians 14:29. It is time of crisis like the current COVID-19 that false prophets and religious charlatans exploit to terrorize believers with a propagation of fear. Since the appearance of the COVID-19, some prophecies and preaching of the Word of God have taken different and confusing directions in explaining biblically what the pandemic is and its origin. Several claim to be prophets have received vision and signs. They do not want to be questioned or doubted, lest one quench the spirit. Because of the risk associated with those who claim to speak in the name of God, expecting people to say only amen, the Bible cautions us and advises us to be vigilant and not to accept anything simply because someone claimed to be a prophet. Even though some professing to have the Spirit of Christ are to be believed, yet not everyone. And though the Spirit is not to be quenched, nor prophesying to be despised, yet care should be taken to what is heard and received. We are called to test every spirit and every prophecy should be weighted. We read, beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirit to see whether they are from God. For many false prophets have gone out into the world. 1 John 4:1. Testing of spirits, spiritual light, knowledge, judgment, experience, and divine guidance are necessary, which should be done without fear or questioning God. All diligent believers and humble inquirers are capable of making judgment of persons and doctrines, whether what they say is from the Spirit of God or not. For the Spirit of God never speaks contrary to God's word. Any comment or input?
Yes, I'm from the Pentecostal background.
Mm-hmm.
And hello.
Yes, Julio.
Yes, Professor. I'm saying I'm from the Pentecostal background.
Mm-hmm.
I understand very well what's going on about all these so-called prophecy and prophets. But I think as a theological institution, what we need to do is to teach those who are perverting the word of God instead of only criticizing them. We need to approach them and let them know the right way to address issues which are sensible, like COVID-19 and other issues which are affecting our continent. Because for them, they think they are right. So I think as a theological institution, we need to approach them and invite them to engage theology, to engage education, spiritual education, so that they may not end up in this kind of error. The rest, I agree very well. Well. I mean, it's well addressed, but we need to go for an action. To point fingers only will not help. We need to do something. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Julio. Any other comments? Would you move to thesis 3? Can you move?
Let's proceed.
Yes, we may proceed.
Thesis 3. We discourage apocalyptic interpretation of the pandemic. And Bible verses, Mark 13:32. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. So let's have a time to read the text for 3 minutes, and then we comment. It is on the screen. After reading, if you have questions, feel free to intervene.
I see a hand from Mitengo, Chimwemwe.
Chimwemwe, go ahead.
Yes, please. This is Chimwemwe Mitengo. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just, of course, this hand I raised on the thesis number 1. And since now we're on thesis number 3, I don't know if I can go back, but it's okay if we can
No
proceed.
problem. No problem.
Okay. On thesis number 1, I was just wondering, the way it has been framed to say that every interpretation of the origin and purpose of COVID-19 is guesswork. So I was just wondering, maybe seeking some clarification, what it means to say the origin is guesswork, while at the same time in the preamble, we have a note that says like it originated from Wuhan in China, and all that information from World Health Organization. And then how can we balance that with this thesis whereby we are saying that the issue of origin is a guesswork? Or am I missing something? Thank you.
Here, the issue, thank you very much. The issue here is in terms of interpretation of the origin. We know that it has been scientifically originated from Wuhan, but some prophets, some church leaders are trying to interpret this like it is the end of the world. It is God's punishment because of the adoption in some churches of same-sex marriage. And God now is punishing people. Both interpretation, saying that the origin is because of the sin. The origin is because of gay marriage. This is just a guesswork. That is the idea.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Next.
There's a hand from Gadi.
Yes, Gadi. Gadi? The microphone is unmuted. Listen.
Can you hear me?
Gadi?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello?
Hello?
Okay, thank you. I'm Gadi from Rwanda. Yes, I'm Gadi from Rwanda. I raised hand when we were still reading the preamble where you said God talk, and then you said about churches and its members. I was appreciating the idea, and since you're in African context, I do agree where it says that God accepts things to work in good and bad situations. So I wanted to add that we should emphasize on especially African churches, so they make these 10 theses their own, because most of the time when things comes bad, or even these prophets we're talking about, all things comes in African context, and it's where they start to judge God, saying that, oh, God is punishing us, God is not fair to us. So I think we should put more emphasis on African churches to hear that this is a God's will, it was his plan. So Africans, our fellows, should understand that it is his plan, not the punishment of his people. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, let's move now. Thesis 4.
Yeah.
Thesis 4. Even in
Yes.
suffering and death, we know God promises to be with us. Have said to you, so that in me you may have peace. In the world you face persecution, but take courage. I have conquered the world. John 16:33. Jesus has never promised life without suffering for different reasons. Death is part of life, with the pain and distress it always brings. While on his way to the cross, Jesus tells his disciples to have peace. But that peace is in spite of persecution they will face. He says he has overcome, conquered the world while precisely on his way to Golgotha. Therefore, any theology which promised life without pain, illness, death is not according to Christ. Even with prayer and fasting, as we do during this pandemic, there is no guarantee it will go away immediately. The challenge is how to have peace and be assured of God's presence and care, even when we are suffering, even to death, due to this pandemic. Our theology must take seriously the fact that even with COVID-19, even when many people die and some are healed, the presence of Emmanuel, God with us, is assured. We may rather be praying for God's grace to be able to drink from the cup, if necessary, without losing our faith. Our peace and message is like Paul saying, "For I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor power, nor hate, nor death, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord." Romans chapter 8, 38, 39. Even in death, we have a promise of resurrection. Since when this perishable body put on imperishability, and this mortal body put in immortality, then the saying that it is written will be fulfilled. Death has been swallowed up in victory. 1 Corinthians 15, 54. Comment?
Yes, Reverend, my name is Adebayo Anthony Kendi. I am calling from the Church of the Lord, Lagos, Nigeria. This message resonates well with the message of our Lord Jesus Christ on hope. However, I'd like to bring to your notice that this message is currently theologically divided in many national contexts, especially with regards to my country, and how prophets are, some categories of prophets are trying to paint a picture that this hope that we seek, or perhaps this coronavirus in itself, is a way of God dealing with some of our elites. And that is why they celebrate their deaths and even wish them hellfire. So you begin to wonder what kind of narrative are churches putting forward in relation to this COVID. So I find strong relevance in the context of this message as a way of trying to strike this balance. One way, again, that this reality within our context here resonates so well with this message is that our people are struggling. Hope seems to be the only thing that they can hold on to in the face of the effect, the post-COVID effect. We have not even got to the post-COVID event, but at least this ease of restrictions, gradual ease of restriction gives that feeling. has been on our people with regards to food insecurity, with regards to unemployment, and with regards to increasing poverty, even in urban cities like Lagos. So this message, of course, is quite balanced in this regard, but maybe a bit more being specific to saying that even in our economic realities, even in the face of economic realities within many African contexts, there is still hope in our God of life.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Adebayo. Thank you for your comment.
Yes, thank you.
There's a hand from Mitengo, Chimwemwe.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to applaud this statement that is found there that reads, therefore, any theology which promises life without pain, illness, death is not according to Christ. I think this statement is very powerful, and it's good that it's here. I'm saying this because in the contemporary times, it seems as if these are the words that are not expected to come out of out from people who have faith. But if we examine exactly what we are supposed to say, this is the right communication to ourselves first, and even as we are engaging with the general society, the general public. This is very much applauded the way I perceive it, because mostly not only those people who preach, and even others who are like in various other professions, it's like when someone speaks like this, in some way, he or she is viewed as to have like a diminished faith, where in fact, this is the way we need to think. So I just applaud for inclusion of this thought. And also maybe from just an addition, maybe as us as we are discussing, one of the things that I do notice about when it comes to issues of death, at times we are not open enough. Speaking from a Malawian perspective, and I think it might also resonate well with many of the African countries, to say that when it comes to issues of death, it's like we don't want to speak about death. We have it like in our traditional setting, whereby to say, if you begin speaking about death, it's like you are inviting death, or you are inviting like someone to die, whereby there is a lot of like death is being closed up. So in this case, with the issues of COVID-19, it's like when someone dies of COVID-19, it looks like it is a very different kind of death from all other deaths that, for example, results from malaria or dysentery or any other disease. So I think as theologians, we need also like to come up to speak for ourselves, and even for those people whom we interact with, to have a right perspective of death, even in this COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Mitengo. Can we now proceed to thesis number 5?
Let's proceed.
Thesis number 5. COVID-19 is a wake-up call for the church. Therefore, he says, awake you who sleep, arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. See that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be unwise, but understand what the will of God, the will of the Lord is. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 14 to 17. COVID-19 has caused fear and anxiety. All economic, financial, and health system is literally every society have been affected. The church and society have been challenged to rethink the way we live, we cooperate, and to evaluate our responsibilities in the world. The church's calling to practical diaconia has been rekindled. We have come to applaud and appreciate the gift of knowledge. Our scientists are working hard to find a cure and vaccine. We value more and more health professional workers who risk their lives to save others. Africa has seen as resurgence of traditional resources for healing and care. We are more aware of connectedness and interdependence of the world than before. The role of faith has also been uplifted, with the notion of dependence on God being laid bare as we find ourselves helpless. Our help comes from the Lord. Psalm 121, verse 1 and 2. You see, thesis number 5. Comment? Yes, Reverend Gift.
Thank you. I think the thesis is very much correct because we, the church, have been reminded that we all have gifts. Those who have theological, those having arts or science gifts. So it's kind of a reminder that we need to come together. The issue of hygiene, the issue of using sanitizers, like using washing of our hands, trying to avoid very close distances. I think it's not turning us apart from our faith, but it is rather reminding us that God has given us the wisdom and the knowledge, respect of different field that we are having in the church, and we need to respect each other's field so that at the end we cannot perish because of lack of knowledge, but rather we'll survive because we are utilizing the knowledge that God has given us accordingly to his will. So I think it's really time that the church, we have recognized that we should work together as one, respect each other's field, each other's professionals, and try to do what is being supposed to be done, despite of that, thinking that our faith is more superior to others people's professional. No, but we should remember that our faith and others professional are all gifts from God. So we need to come together. And I think when we work together, we'll overcome not only the COVID-19, but all that will be troubling us in this world. As we work together, then we can come to the point where we overcome together and hence strengthen our faith, and the growth of the church will prosper. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Make a comment.
Any other comment?
Yes, I have a comment.
Yes.
I'm Damon from Zambia. For me, the theme speaks to me a lot, especially as a church. I think when we mention that COVID-19 has caused fear and anxiety, all economic and financial and health systems in every society have been challenged. When I look at the church and the impact that COVID-19 has had, I think it's huge. The church being dependent on on members giving offerings, and that's the source of income. And when there was closure of the churches, you find that then the church did not have finances. And most of the cases, most of the congregations could not even look after their ministers. I think it's true, this is a wake-up call. The church then must begin to invest in projects that are able to raise funds, and then the church will be able to respond to needs that affect society. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello, can I add one more?
Pardon?
Can I add one more?
Please.
This is Moti from Ethiopia.
Mm-hmm.
I want to, I think that the thesis of the team it's interesting, and it's better to include how the churches work on family worship. How families again are a nucleus part of for the church. So this is a time the church learn and a wake up call to see family worship like all days. And this is my first. The second is even regarding we have different differences, like with different denomination, like Baptist or any you can mention like the Orthodox. But in the Ethiopia context, for example, we have a program in the broadcasting in the television. Every night, different churches equip their members to how protect themselves from COVID-19 or how to survive from the crisis and to pray together. So this is one way the church, a wake-up call to work with other denominations. So this is also, it's better to include because it's a vast, thesis number 5 is a vast and big, also it's necessary. So I want to add these two things, family worship. The second is working with other denominations.
Can I comment?
Yes, Sam.
My name is Sam from Kenya, and I want to agree with this thesis number 5 that COVID-19 is a wake-up call for the church. And I think my comment would be on the area of technology, because times, and especially the mainstream churches, have ignored this powerful reach-out tool of technology, and most of us were caught unawares, where the first few weeks when we had to stream live, it was chaotic, it was actually embarrassing. And quoting from the scripture, Ephesians 5:14-17, it talks about us living as wise people, but not as unwise. And I think any church that would want to be relevant, and especially in Africa today and all over the world, must know and appreciate and embrace the place of technology in ministry or in church. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you very much. Can we move to thesis 6? Can you proceed?
Yes, we may proceed.
Let's proceed.
Thesis number 6. COVID-19 is a reminder to the church of calling to be in solidarity with the poor and the vulnerable. Truly, I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. Matthew chapter 25:40. COVID-19 has impacted people differently in nations, cities, and villages where the church is present. It is reminded to take seriously its call to be in solidarity with the most vulnerable, the poor, the homeless, the unemployed, refugees, displaced people suffer more than those whose economic and social situation enable them to fend for themselves better. With the lockdown, we hear about a dramatic increase in gender-based violence against women and children. People with disability are not cared for properly. And those who have recovered from the disease face stigma in their own communities. Churches in Africa, in the spirit of Ubuntu, are called to remember Jesus saying that the way we serve him is through serving those in our midst who need extra attention in different ways. And we thank God that many churches are doing so. This is 6. Comment?
And from Gadi.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing in this number 6. It reminds me that we should always fight for social justice. And when you bring in this calling for societies, I think of that the church and other institutions and other theological institutions and even the community is there especially to bring in social justice in our communities with those who are hungry and those who doesn't have shelters. And in this time of COVID-19, I've seen that everyone needs justice, because even those who are well equipped were staying in, those who are poor were staying in. And it was a good time to show that the church is really fighting for the solidarity for people in different situations and circumstances of life. So I think I should appreciate this piece number 6, because it is showing the church that it's an institution which is there to encourage and support and fight for social justice to everyone, regardless of their backgrounds. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Damon, there's somebody else, Damon,
Yes,
and Francois.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you again. Thesis number 6 is another interesting and wonderful thesis, and a very good reminder to the church. However, I want to speak to the last sentence, which reads, "And we thank God that many churches are doing so." Allow me, Prof, to maybe speak from my context, in which I think the church is not doing much. I say this because if I look at the numbers, maybe, for example, when we talk of gender-based violence and during the lockdowns and how many victims that we had, and we look at the response that the church gave to this pandemic of gender-based violence, you will find that in my context, this wasn't much. And so to say we thank God we're doing so, I think my prayer is that the church must wake up and begin to do what we are supposed to do. Otherwise, we have a lot of homeless children in the streets because the church, for me, in my context, is still sleeping. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to bring also to your attention that we'll not reach a point whereby we'll never see children on the street where this issue will be eradicated 100%. That one, I don't think that we reach that point. Because even when in Jesus' time, they were there. Those kind of people, they were there. But the church should do what it could, because we will have beggars. We'll have, those children on the street. We'll still have them. But we need to eradicate that action and do what we could. But they will still be there. Thank you. Anybody else? Any comment?
Francois? Yes, thank you. I am Françoise from Rwanda. I agree with this thesis number 6, that this COVID-19 is the reminder for the church to be in solidarity with the poor and vulnerable. But what I can add is that also the church need to care about the lives of their people, all their people, or all people, because in this time of pandemic, some people became vulnerable because they were not poor, but because the pandemic, they became poor. Some of them lost their jobs, and they suffered a lot. What I can say is that the church needed to be in solidarity with all people, and the church needed to care about the lives of their people, because some can suffer if the church cannot take care about all people. Some people can suffer and the church cannot recognize that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Françoise.
Thank you too.
Any other comment? Otherwise, we proceed.
Gadi?
Bring in again, as you talk about solidarity, that this is the right time for the Department of Diacony in the church to be more active and reach those poor and other people who are in need, as said before. I think this is very powerful and important, especially in our community, as my friend from Ethiopia mentioned, the street children. There are even those who can not afford to go to that street, but still they're in that same situation in need. So I think this is really to sharpen or to restructure again the department of the diacony in the church to be in solidarity with our community and make the church alive in our society. Thank you. That's what I wanted to contribute to.
Thank you, Gadi.
Yes.
Now,
welcome.
let us proceed. Thesis number 7. We understand better what abundant life means. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. John 10:10. It is common to associate abundant life promised by Jesus with material things. Wealth and well-being are presented as the ultimate result of our faith and being a fulfillment of the promise of Jesus. Endless pursuit of wealth leads to corruption of our leaders as a result of greed and selfishness. To always want more. The outbreak of COVID-19 has taught humanity that those things that we seek most are, after all, not that valuable. We have recognized that most of what we own is actually never needed, as we have been under restriction of lockdowns where we neither need them nor were we able to use them. It is a call particularly to our leaders to focus on what matters most in our lives together as we face mutual vulnerability through investment in local services, particularly healthcare system, which in Africa are in very precarious status. Just as Paul taught in Timothy chapter 1, 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 7 and 6, for we brought nothing into the world, so we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with this. And abundant life is possible only when it is for all, not just for a few privileged ones. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I'm there among them. Matthew chapter 28, 18, 20. The restriction of physical gathering have presented a church with a rare challenge and opportunity to interrogate what it means to meet as a congregation. In many countries, churches' services in physical structures have been banned, and where they are still allowed are under severe restriction of physical contact. We are challenged theologically on how to understand the presence of Jesus among us as promised, especially when we cannot celebrate sacrament in the same physical space together. At the same time, we have found a rare opportunity to embrace possibilities to practice social gathering virtually through sharing of sermon via electronic media, live streaming of services, prayer chain around the world, offering via mobile money services, etc. At the same time, it is also an opportunity to rethink of the home as a place of worship for the family. We wait to see how this new phenomenon will affect our life together as congregation after the pandemic, because one cannot hug a computer or phone. I combined two. I've gone to two theses. But let us go by 7 first. This is 7 first. This is 7.
Reverend Paul Kakoza, Uganda.
Yes, Reverend Paul. Go ahead. Is his microphone unmuted? Hello? Reverend Paul?
Hello?
Yes,
yes,
go ahead.
Yes, are you hearing me?
You have the floor.
I just wanted to give an experience of the church in Uganda. I have a 2 dimensions to offer here.
Which thesis
One
are you
is
dealing with? Which thesis are you dealing with?
The response of the church to the families and the people that are disadvantaged and heavily hit by coronavirus.
Hello? Which thesis are you in now?
I think it's not on number 6.
We are dealing now with 7. You are responding to 7. This is 7.
Oh, I had raised my hand, but I think you didn't see me.
Oh, you are going back to 6. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So I just wanted to give an experience of the church in Uganda, where the traditional churches have been able to make a response and stand with the vulnerable groups, the groups of people that cannot access food, people who could not access medical services, and mothers that could not access antenatal services. But there is also another challenge that I wanted to pose, and I don't know the experience of other countries, where the church, especially the Pentecostal church in Uganda, and other churches, a few of them, mainly owned by individuals, they had made money, but they have continued to exploit people through demands of giving, and they reprimand people to give money through mobile services. So I don't know what would be your take on this, because there are two dimensions where the church is expected to stand with the victims, but there is also another side where the pastors are exploiting the people who are already in need. That's my submission.
Thank you. Before we pass, anyone has a comment on that? A comment? According to experience in your country, your different countries?
Yes, I may comment saying that it won't be easy, I mean, to control which church is doing this and doing that. I think the best approach we can do is to, I mean, learn from good experiences and also influence those we can on our network to do, I mean, good practice according to the word of God. Because to be honest, it's not easy to go after those who are taking money from people and stuff. I mean, we need to concentrate on what we're doing and do it better. That's what I think I may contribute on what he has said so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Julio. This is 8. Physical distancing and contextualization of theology of our living together as a church.
Excuse me.
Yes.
On thesis 7, this is Chimwemwe Mitengo from Malawi.
Mm-hmm.
On thesis 7, I see that this is another very powerful response that AACC is doing to this pandemic, that is helping ourselves and even the general society to redefine what abundant life means. This is very powerful. This is very necessary. I was just also wondering if at all there can be a way of maybe restructuring this statement that I'm just about to read from thesis 7, so that it can reflect even ourselves as part and parcel of the idea. The statement is, and I quote, "Endless pursuit of wealth leads to corruption of our leaders. As a result of endless greed and selfishness to always want more." So this statement, I see that it is even speaking to ourselves. So I was thinking that sometimes when we are speaking in this language of like our leaders, we tend to forget that yeah, even though we are young theologians, but in our various churches that we are coming from, we are also leaders there. And then when we have it like this, corruption of our leaders, it's like we are separating ourselves from our leaders. It's like I don't know if I'm not thinking in a right way. I might be corrected to say like we are pointing fingers at the leaders, forgetting that we are also part and parcel of that unique category of leaders. So I don't know if there can be a way of rephrasing this statement so that it can even include ourselves, not like just thinking of leaders as a them, not us. Because the way I'm seeing is like we are like pointing fingers at those people. It's like we are outside that context. That's my submission. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The idea here is, as it has been said, in terms of medical health facilities, Africa is not a poor continent. We are potentially rich, one of the richest continents in the world. But when we see, we take on our medical facilities, it is very sad. In the state, we can see those medical facilities. The idea here now, with this pandemic, we are kind of being terrorized because we cannot accommodate people in our facility, those who are infected by coronavirus, because our facility cannot just have what is needed to help people over there. This is why we are pointing here for leader in the government who should try to put aside their greed and try to think of the good, the welfare of the people in terms of good medical facilities. This is the idea behind this, thesis.
Oh, thank you. So as you are saying, it means it's directed like to our leaders in the government.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Not our leaders in the churches. No, government.
So maybe I suggest then to include that qualification, just a suggestion, maybe to include that qualification to say our leaders in the government or our government leaders, because as the way it is, it's like just general. Thank you.
Okay. Now let us move to thesis 8. Physical distancing call for contextualization of theology of our living together as church. For when 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I'm there among them. This is Matthew. Let me read it again. The restrictions of physical gathering have presented a church with a rare challenge.
Prof, you are fading.
I beg pardon?
You need to come closer to the mic. You are fading.
I said the restriction of okay. The restriction of physical gathering have presented a church with a rare challenge and opportunity to interrogate what it means to meet as a congregation. In many countries, church services in physical structures have been banned, and where they are still allowed are under severe restriction of physical contact. We are challenged theologically on how to understand the presence of Jesus among us as promised, especially when we cannot celebrate sacrament in the same physical space together. At the same time, we have found a rare opportunity to embrace opportunities to practice social gathering virtually through sharing of sermon, through electronic media, live streaming of services, prayer chains around the world, offering via mobile money services, etc. At the same time, it is also an opportunity to rethink of the home as a place of worship for the family. We wait to see how this new phenomenon will affect our life together as a congregation after the pandemic. Christine, scroll. Listen.
Yes.
Christine, can you scroll?
Okay.
No. We're still in 8.
Can you see?
The continuation now. Just a minute. Because there's another part which is not there.
Maybe it's missed out.
After the pandemic, because one, it is missing there, because one cannot hug a computer or phone. Because one cannot hug a computer or phone. It ends there because one cannot hug a computer or phone. Comment?
Yes, I think there is an impact which is negative to the church because not everyone surely have an Android to follow up on a social media message that the church is trying to put it together. So I think we really need to have immediately, if possible, our gathering again. We should observe every, requirement from the World Health Organization or the local authorities of health. And we can even have members from our churches who are working at the hospital who can help how to, having services in a way that we are preventing, from this disease. I think it's really a challenge to us not having this social gathering. But again, I think if we can observe 1.5 meters or 2 meters and having the mask, also having, everything to clean our hands and stuff, it can be helpful so that we can come together again and gather together. Yeah, so I think the church need to, advocate, within our governments so that they may allow us to quickly come together. I'm told in Malawi, for example, the head of the state who was recently appointed is from the Assemblies of God backgrounds, and he's calling up the nation for 3 days of fasting and prayer against COVID-19. That's a good initiative, but I think it's not enough. We need to have our church open, and we need to also observe everything that it takes, to avoid the propagation of the virus through the church. Thank you.
Thank you, Judo. Any other comment?
Yes, I would want to agree with this thesis 8, that the church has to recontextualize and rethink her theology so as to remain relevant, and especially for the traditional churches. I come from the Anglican Church of Kenya here in Nairobi, and among our greatest struggles at the moment is how to conduct services like infant dedication, sharing of the Eucharist, baptism, and all that. And it poses a very great challenge, and especially to the conservatives who have no room to make adjustments. Those people who feel like non-contact services are not meaningful. Those people who do not believe that you can still, those people who emphasize more on the actions more than the words or more than the meaning. And I think I want to agree when we say that the church must rethink and recontextualize our theology, because it is true that COVID-19 will definitely change the way that we used to doing things. Thank you.
Thank you. Moti?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you
Go
hear
ahead.
me?
Go ahead.
Just the last line. We wait to see how this phenomena will affect our life together as a congregation after the pandemic. Will affect, I think the meaning sometimes it goes to the negative side. Better to say, in this case, the phenomena will affect both positively and negatively, because we don't see only the negative side. Look, home as a place of worship for the family. This is families again to start have communion as a family. So sometimes we have a good opportunity, sometimes we have negative. So it's better to add this word.
Thank you. Thank you for your remark. Can you move now? We proceed to thesis number 9.
Please, let's go. Let's proceed.
Thesis number 9. We need to rethink. We need to rethink the funeral and mourning practices. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jew who came with her also weeping. He was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. John 11:33. Jesus attending a funeral demonstrates the significance of supporting the bereaved family to convey a message of hope and assurance of life after death. Physical distancing due to COVID-19 makes many Christians wonder how to fulfill their duty to rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. Romans chapter 12:15. And remain consistent with the government protocols of fighting the pandemic to protect all from being infected or infecting others. For Africans, a funeral is a very significant emotional, social, spiritual, public event and a part of closures. Attendance of a funeral is therefore expected of relatives and friends, including those in other villages, towns, and abroad. Social distancing poses a challenge to cultural and spiritual practice of a decent burial, while ironically helping to rethink the irrelevance of the increasing commercialization and ostentation of funeral across Africa. We need to find a new theological narrative to accommodate the needs of those who are mourning and those who miss the event. This is 9. Comments.
Prof.
Yes, Gift.
Yes, thank you. For me, I think despite of the problem that we see due to the burial funeral services that have been provided during this time of pandemic, and also our tradition as Africans, but I also see the goodness out of it, because we have seen many of the costs that were used to be spent on the funerals or marriage ceremonies have been minimized a lot. So it has at least gave a relief to the family members, who even some of them had to take loans in order to deal with these funerals issues or marriage ceremonies so far. So I think it has not only bring negative impact, but also there's positivity in it, that we should not all people can attend funeral services, and also the blaming from the families that, hey, why did you miss the family funeral? I don't know, whatever. At least now we didn't expect that during this COVID-19. So at least there's peace and harmony among the family members, and those who were very far away or the hard works that could not release them on duty to go for the funerals, not to get blamed. So I think the church also now, we can come up with a new theological that not all people should attend the funerals, and not that all funerals should be so costful, because people should encounter cost of traveling, meals and accommodation in order all just to come to the village to make sure the body is being buried. But we can all attend even when we are far away. We can use the media to see the events, but also we can just pray as spiritual hugs. We can give each other spiritual hugs, sermons that will be comforting one another without attending there physically. So I think it's also good to me in this African context, where normally funerals are among of events that cost a lot of families, and some even family members come to poverty because they have lost their loved one, because they had to sell a car, they had to sell a land in order to make sure the funeral event goes smoothly by slaughtering a cow, having drinks and whatever. So for this COVID-19, I think it is a turnaround to theology that what matters when someone is dead is to be buried and not having a lot of these unnecessary expenses. And the most important thing is to comfort one another physically, spiritually, no matter how close or far we are from one another. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Reverend Mokeseng, followed by Cornelius. Reverend Mokeseng. Unmute your microphone. Reverend Mokeseng.
Yes, Professor. Good day, sir.
Good day.
Yes, I've been following and I want to make comment on this funeral issue. This is 9. Okay. For us here in Sierra Leone, it has taken a devastating toll on family members and relatives. Because for us here, we are a religious tolerant country. We have open access to church and mosques. We are religious tolerant to that extent. And people are so religious in this country that they believe that once someone dies, that person has to be taken to his or a church or mosque, especially for somebody who have served greatly in that church. But for us here in Sierra Leone is that, sorry, when someone dies, now the corpse is not taken to the church. Of course, churches were closed. The band were only raised on Monday the 13th. For us, the Christian. Hello? Hello? Okay.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Can I? Yeah, okay. For us, the Christian, this Sunday will be the first Sunday we are going to church since churches were closed down. There were lockdowns and bans on all religious activities. So the bans were only raised Monday the 13th, and then we'll be going to church this Sunday. Now, even when the bans have been raised, the government still puts a ban on funerals, that funerals should not take place in the churches. Now, funerals still takes place in the funeral home. And the way those funerals are done has a psychological effect on the families. Because we've used to laying out the corpse in the home, people will come and view the corpse, take them to the church hall, or if somebody has served the church so well, inside of the church, you have all the reverends coming together, all the members, the organizations in the church that the person have joined will come and give tribute. That gives solace and comfort to the family. But now all those ones are not being done. Now these services are held for only 45 minutes at the funeral homes. You go there, you are rushed out because there are over 5 or more funerals each day. So once you go there, you are rushed and then you'll be asked out. Even the number of reverends that will go there, maybe they only accept 2 or 3. Organization members will not be allowed, maybe 1, then a number of 25, inclusive of the family members. So that have a negative effect on our members now. So like people are calling on now that churches and mosques reopen. Why can't this funeral be transferred to these churches and mosques again? Because it makes no sense. At the funeral home, the corpse will be laid out there, and then you have people to come and view. And when the service wants to start, they ask everybody out. Then out of the funeral home compound, there will be a lot of people, even along the drive that leads to the different funeral homes. Like the major one in Freetown, which is the Connaught Hospital Mortuary. If you go there now, almost every day, that place is packed full. So it doesn't make sense. How are they preventing this COVID-19? Because if you go to the churches, this will be the same procedure. Okay, allow the corpse to go to the churches, then people can view it. And the number they want will remain in the churches. Because now there are so many restrictions, services should not go more than 130 minutes, the normal services now that we'll be having on Sunday. The churches are forced to have 2 or 3 services or more for those with larger congregations. So you see these effect, and as for us Africans, we've taken funeral. That's where we show all our excess love and everything and so on, to show that we love the person and all. So people are getting aggrieved that their relations or loved ones are not given befitting funeral, especially those this side of our own part, Sierra Leone. If you have belonged to the church, like I'm part from the Methodist Church, if you have gone to the height of senior society steward or senior society, a society steward, or you have been a local preacher or whatever, you are so active in the church, it's a very big funeral where communion will be given and everything. You have most of the clergy and organizations coming together. That appease the family. But now all those ones are not done. Even less than 45 minutes, they'll be urging you to leave that place. So most people go to the cemetery to wait. And we don't do opening of the corpse at the cemetery. So that's my own contribution, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cornelius. Reverend Mokeng. Reverend Mokeseng. Mokeseng. Unmute your microphone. Unmute your microphone.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, my concern is on verses 9. I'm saying the way Africans understand their own culture during the funerals practices is one of the hardships to the church to transform. But I think if we positively attend to their understanding, in a slight manner, introducing them to be aware of this pandemic and the precautions that are laid before, so as to prevent the new infections. I think Africans can understand, but the church itself or herself needs to be in a state of trying to contextualize the strategies, how to deal with things on this pandemic and even on the other life threats that we may encounter in the coming years. I think Africans can understand, provided they are under pressure of this pandemic nowadays. Coming to the issue of attending funerals through this new technology, it is still a problem on some, because in the rural areas where in Lesotho here, we found it a problem because we talked of the vulnerability of our nations and our people, because some of them lost their jobs, some of them also have nothing as we speak, have nothing even to eat in their own places. Therefore, it is still a challenge on how we can say they attend the funeral through online videos or whatever that may be used to try to restrict travels from one place to another, as to restrict this pandemic, the spread of this pandemic. I think we as the church, we need to try to speak out, like the thesis is saying, to teach, even in a very small meetings that we may have of the families, meeting few people, to try to make people understand what we are trying to say, that they need to be aware of this pandemic that is this dangerous to their lives, is dangerous to their society at large, so that they may come to the sense of mourning even in the distances, not as such to come gathering that is banned by the government protocols as a way to fight the pandemic. I thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Reverend. We have Chimwemwe.
Thank you very much, Prof. On the same thesis 9, I think as it has been put, it's very strong. Not very strong in a negative way. I think it's very well put to say that we need to rethink the funeral and the mourning practices. I completely agree with this idea of rethinking, more especially because we as Africans, we know the kind of respect, the kind of respect that we have for the funeral. That is having an idea of the last respect to the one who is deceased. So I am also thinking that as we are encouraging to rethink the funeral and mourning practices, we also need to balance that with the speed at which we are rethinking. Because I'm seeing that if we are too fast in the rethinking of the funeral and mourning practices, in the process, we might as well erode some of the good practices that we as Africans are known. More especially, as we are encouraging the coming in of technology and all these other things. The reason I'm saying that we need to rethink, but not at a high speed, is that if we are very much fast, in the end, we might find ourselves, because we know ourselves being a communion people, whereby we do things like in communities. We are not individualistic. So if we rethink our practices very quickly at an alarming speed, we might find ourselves also eroding some of the cohesive networks that hold us together as Africans, that we know that we do things as communities. So as we are rethinking, yes, rethinking is very good and is very necessary. But at the same time, we have also to consider the speed at which we are rethinking, so as not to erode our good aspects that are there in our community for the sake of just accommodating, because the way I'm seeing it, it's like at the speed which we are going, we might find ourselves eroding even all the good things that we have as a community for the sake of just keeping in line with the COVID-19, as yes, the measures we are putting there, but we also need to be balancing with the communal things that we know that they are necessary to keep us as Africans the way we are known. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We need to balance. So now.
Yes, Professor, thank you.
Yes.
I think the way we are doing now is the correct way, because we are preventing, the expanding of a disease which is which can kill people. So I think in my country, in my own experience, I had to conduct a funeral where only 20 people. I didn't have the choir team and anyone. I had to use my own experience of singing to sing with the family, mourning with them, to do the burial and preaching again and stuff like that. And then at home, what we have conversed that, okay, let's see, on Monday, this is the team that is coming, 5 people, join the family, pray together, not exceeding the number of 20, which is the what the government have said. So I think we need to comply during this pandemic. Until we hear from the World Health Organization that the pandemic is controlled. Before that, let's comply with whatever it is that the government is saying as a church, because we need to, to respect the authorities which are legally established. We don't need to come like, yeah, we are faithful people, yeah, no problem, we are Africans like that. Otherwise, we lose people. People will die. So I think as a church, we're responsible. We need to comply what the authorities are saying. And again, we don't lose the spirit of Ubuntu, but let's contextualize and adapt in what it is happening right now globally. Thank you.
Thank you, Julio. Now let us proceed to the last thesis. Thesis 10.
Professor.
Yes, there's a hand.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just, some of my friends also said, just to say one thing, I'm hearing some voice, but what I can suggest is, we cannot leave, I put.
Someone need to mute the microphone. Someone need to mute the microphone there. Okay. Asefa, go ahead.
I like all the idea that we have put it here, but like my suggestion here is maybe this thing is for a temporal period. So we are not gathering for mourning and crying together as we used to do, but it is a temporal thing. But one thing that we need to know is we'll meet together in heaven and worship together. So maybe putting that idea here so that though we depart here for a moment and though we cannot be together, thinking that we'll be having fellowship eternally, we need to abide by the rules of the government and the medical doctors are proposing to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let us, Cornelius again, go ahead.
Yes, Professor, I've been following up. Yeah, we need to keep to the procedures and protocols of the COVID-19 issued by the government. I acknowledge that. What I'm saying here is that in Africa, just as written on the thesis, funeral is part, I would say it's part of us, way of showing affection and care for one another. Now it's like in Africa, you find that people will not be talking for 5-10 years, but when the one person dies, the other one will be there. Okay, I've forgiven you, and so on. Now coming to Sierra Leone, where I'm talking from. Okay, now you find out that, as I was saying, you don't see the reality of the COVID-19. You don't see it because there are political gatherings, meetings, and other stuff going on. So if you're going to tell me, give me a good reason why I should not gather together. But you look around, there's so much gathering, even at the funeral, I said earlier. Outside, people will chat and talk. Bars are still opening. There are bars along the beaches that we have policemen guarding those places where people sit. And so now if you tell me that I should not go for a funeral, whilst people go to the bars, the beaches, and enjoy themselves, it doesn't sound realistic. If you want to tell me that don't go to a funeral or have social distancing, then what about those in the beach? What about those out in the street? Go to the marketplace and everything. Just as somebody earlier said, it's like when it comes on Sunday, that's why people are afraid to go to church or so on. Now, here in Sierra Leone, we see that most of the institutions are now based on church and mosques. Yeah, because almost every other thing have gone fully. People are having parties, weddings, beach bars are opening, the place is so crowded, everybody moving around. The only institution that you can find is on the churches. Churches should keep for 1 hour 30 minutes. If you want to go beyond that, you have to have 2-3 or more services, like those multi-congregational churches. So for us here, I don't know, I'm not talking about others. I'm not saying that we should not keep the COVID-19. But for us on this side, Sierra Leone, Freetown to be particular, it's unfortunate I don't have any way to show you around, but I should have shown you scenes. And from here, I'm going to a funeral. Maybe I'll take some pictures and send them to AACC or what, so you can see that you don't see social distancing. People go to the funeral home, view the bodies, the corpse, and then went to the cemetery to wait. At the cemetery, nobody's going to tell you to observe social distancing. There will be hundreds of people at the cemetery waiting. So that's my own take on this, on my own look. So for us here, the government have to do something to let people believe. Like when Ebola was there, people believe because we saw it, we saw the dead bodies, we saw everything that was happening. But here it's just talking, and everybody's doing what they feel like doing out there. Thank you.
Thank you. That will be very unfortunate to not trust what is going on and wait until the situation becomes worse. Then people start taking measure. That will be late. So we pray that authority in Sierra Leone may understand that it's very dangerous.
Yeah, people are taking the measures. What I'm saying is that the government is not showing the reality of it there. Because if you look the news, they go out for presentation of this Veronica bucket, this bucket that have this staff. If they go to give it somewhere, they go to their political stuff and everything. People are dancing, jubilating, being together, being in a cluster, and so on. So what they are preaching is not reflecting to the people. Just like, do what I say, don't do what I do. That was the government is doing here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They have to be careful because if they don't, then chaos may happen. But let us move to the last one. This is 10. This is 10. We call on governments to fulfill their duty of ensuring welfare to all. For the Lord's sake, accept the authority of every human institution, whether of the emperor as supreme, or of governors as sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to praise those who do right. First Peter chapter 2, 13 and 14. Government have a duty to protect citizens from contamination of the COVID-19 and ensure treatment, care, safety for the sick, their families, and the welfare for all people. It is for this reason, it is for that reason, the Bible says government are appointed by God and should be respected and obeyed. Romans 13. Churches are following and supporting government protocols to counter the transmission of the virus, even when such protocol restrict the usual ways of exercising their faith. But there are governments who fulfill their duty and those who are corrupted or careless or oppressive. The church has a prophetic duty to remind and ensure that state uphold justice and fairness as it implement prophetic duty to remain and ensure that state uphold justice and fairness as it has a prophetic duty to remind and ensure, I'm just coming back again, ensure that state uphold justice and fairness as it implement drastic measures to counter the infection of COVID-19. Advocacy for vulnerable to live a life of dignity, condemnation of brutality against the people, and calling out abuses and corrupt practices should not be seen as acts of disloyalty and disobedience, but a prophetic role of the church. Your comment.
Thank you, Prof. I think what the government need really to do is to focus on vulnerable people, those who cannot afford, to have food and electricity and water during this pandemic, because I believe there is a fund from government to sustain all these things. So I think the government should focus on that to take care of those who are vulnerable, which they are not doing right now. So I think we need as a church to advocate for the government to take care of that. It's true that's the church role to take care of them vulnerable, but we need to, to go and talk and advocate to the government to do this. So as a matter of fact, in my country, the government is not supplying with food and stuff, but I think it's their role to do that, to maintain life, in our country normally. So that's what's happening. So I think as a church, we need to, that's what I say, Professor, as a church, we need to do that. So that's my contribution. And I think the way ACC theologian has put it is fine, but we really need to continue to do that. So we need to continue with that and do the work the way it must be done. Unfortunately, the government is not concerned on the people who are less privileged. So we need to advocate as a church so that we may include those people who we are not privileged in terms of food distribution and stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. Any other comment?
Yes, Reverend.
Go ahead.
I think this is a really critical situation here in Africa, even in my country. We were called to donate to the government so that they can support people who are suffering from COVID-19 and those who cannot even afford the medical expenses. But yet people did so, but the government took the donation and we don't know what are they using it for. Until now, they didn't even support people, even with masks or sanitizers or maybe water support, medical support. And bad enough, like in our country, even when you are being discovered that you have COVID-19, despite of the fact that you have the health insurance, but the package of treating you with COVID-19 is out of the medical insurance. So even having the medical insurance does not give you a privilege that you'll get the support or the medical attendance. So you need to have cash in order to have that kind of treatments. So most of the people died not because of the critical situation of the COVID-19, but the poor support from the government. And that is very bad for African image, and that shows that we need to really we are the church to come forth and speak to the government that they need to fulfill their duty. Their duty is not only to collect income, but also to spend the income. And the way of spending it is by returning it back to the people. We pay taxes every day. So even the taxes should come back as the way as to encourage people, motivate people, make sure their well-being is well maintained so that next year or next month, they can give tax back to the government. So to me, this is it's really troubling me because we are really suffering. People are not given any support. And bad enough, people who are rich, companies, they donated billions of money to the government so that the government could help people to overcome this pandemic. But bad enough is that despite of the donation, they have kept the money. I think they're going to use it maybe for politics or whatever. But the real purpose of the money was to help people who are in need and give support to the people who are suffering. But they're not doing so until now. So let's pray for the government, but also we raise our voice at the prophetic voice to remind the responsibilities of the government so that they can take their task accordingly to God's will. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Gift. Any other comment?
Yeah, Prof.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, it is a government that needs to feel their rightful duty. Yes, it's quite right. Even as a Lutheran, for me, this is a wonderful idea to put. But maybe in order to make it, I don't know, maybe people to hear people to their ears. Maybe is it good to say that churches should follow the medical protocols that are given with the Ministry of Health or something of their country, so that they can be abided by, because as the points have been made, some of the governments are not be democratic, some are, embezzling the people's money, and when they hear of the government, they might have like offensive thought. But we need to put that, yes, the government has a rightful duty to take care, but this is a medical thing. It's not just a medical government protocol, but it's a medical prescription for the people to abide by in order to keep themselves from this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other comment or before we close?
I think, Prof, that as a church, we need really to advocate to be close, to governments, even establishing intercessory prayers rooms within president cabinets, so that we may produce and really impact as a prophetic voice as a church. I think that's the next step as ACC we should do, because we need to influence our government to understand that the power comes from above. Nobody can govern without God himself. We're sovereign and in control of everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have reached the end of our reflection, our sharing. So I would like to thank you very much for your availability and for your input. We have harvested your comment, and we'll try to work with other comments from the other groups in such a way that we come up with a brochure in both French and English. And we have a publishing house which is called Edition Clé in Cameroon, which is ready to help publish.
I protest. No Portuguese available. Portuguese on. No Portuguese available for the brochure.
Okay, I take note. So I'll come back to you so that we get a kind of translation. We come back because those are the three languages that we have at ACC: French, English, and Portuguese. Thank you for the reminder. So I have an announcement. The announcement is about the second Theological Symposium. Last year, 2019, in October, AACC held an international symposium on misleading theologies. And that we had 100 participants coming from 32 countries across the continent, but also from the diaspora. And from that symposium, we have agreed that every year, AACC should hold a symposium. And this year, God willing, since we see now that the airports are now opening up, countries are opening up the airport in November, from 23rd November to 28th, we'll be having a Theological Symposium, the second, here at AACC. We hope it will not be virtual, but it will be on the ground. And if you go, we check our website, you will see that everything has been posted. The forms, the flyers, and everything is there. So the cost is the ticket and the accommodation. The accommodation is almost $400 US. But AACC could give some subsidy for people who commit themselves, who show commitment to participate or to attend the symposium. If you fill the form, you should show your commitment with that amount of money as my contribution. And the ACC will see whether it can cover the cost of accommodation or airfare or whatever. So you go through the form and tick wherever necessary. This symposium will deal with the issue of wealth and prosperity, wealth and theologies of wealth and prosperity. So that will be the theme of the upcoming symposium. If Christine has it, I don't know whether you have it, you can just post it now. You don't have it? It doesn't have the flyer with her, but it is on our website. Complexity of theologies of wealth and prosperities. So the speakers will come from the participant. When you fill the form, you show your interest. If you wanted to participate as a speaker or just an attendee, so you show on the form, you tick wherever necessary. And the closing date is September 30th. That will be the closing date. Last year, we had more than 100 participants, but we limited ourselves to 100. If we reach 100, we cannot go beyond. We just want to get 100 participants, and that's it. So you are welcome, and I hope by November 23rd, all airports will be open for international flight. So we welcome you at the Despon Tutu Conference Center, where we'll enjoy the second annual symposium on misleading theologies. So once again, thank you for your participation and thank you for your contribution. I look forward to seeing you in November, God willing. Thank you very much.
Be blessed.
Be blessed. Yeah.
Amen.
God bless you. It's a wonderful piece.
Obrigado.
Look forward to get the final thing.
Obrigado.
God bless
Thank you,
Christine.
Prof.
Christine.
Thank you.
Obrigado.
God
Obrigado.
bless
Obrigado.
you.
Bye
God
bye
bless
See
you.
you
bye
all.
bye
Goodbye.
bye.
Goodbye.
Yeah,
Good to
bye
see you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Au revoir.
Bye. Bye.
All right.
Christine.
See you. Bye.